Techsuite for the C-suite, bridging the gap between technology and business. Welcome, Alec. Nice to have you on. Thank you for coming. For all the listeners, please give a short introduction to your story and what you're working on.
Yeah, thanks so much, Samuel. Really great to be on with you. I've been watching some of your episodes, and it's really exciting. I think you do a great job of bringing the right people on, getting them to tell their story, getting them to talk about very interesting topics. So I'm extremely excited to be here. For those of you who are unfamiliar with me, my name is Alec Beckman, and I am the co-founder of a company called Advantage Blockchain, which is a research, education, and investment company, as well as the founder of a crypto project on Base called ETH Printer.
Lovely. It's like Base is coming up a lot. There's also around the Farcaster ecosystem where I move a lot. It's going to be a lovely conversation. For all the listeners that don't have any blockchain experience, what's your elevator pitch on what blockchains are?
On what blockchains are, so I see blockchains as the greatest self-auditing system in the entire world. So what it is it essentially a way to store data that is incorruptible, which is really valuable for things like financial transactions, for industries like AI, cloud computing, gaming. There are so many applications that can be used for blockchain, and where I see blockchain headed is everyone in the world at some point will be using blockchain because it adds efficiency as a technology to each individual industry, and most people won't even realize that they're using it, which is very exciting. So what we do at Advantage Blockchain is we're betting on a lot of these different use cases and applications that will be used in the future, and most people won't even know that they're happening, while the technology is still young and being built and being still created. And then on the ETH printer side, we love to be in the action. The team and I, we founded a cryptocurrency that's on Base, that we feel is really valuable for the Base community, and a way for people on Base to actually get more Ethereum, which we see as one of the most important layers of blockchain, as where all of these future applications and use cases can actually be built and used.
What I find super interesting about Ethereum itself is that it's, well, not limited in supply like Bitcoin is, which is what most people talk about when they think crypto. And yet Ethereum still manages to capture so much of the conversation, especially as one gets into building blockchain applications. So I think it's great that you're giving people the chance to get ETH. I also find it super interesting that you're saying logs and like audits, because how I think about blockchain is as a log, like an audit trail. That, like you said, that could mean a financial ledger, that could mean database transactions, that could mean whatever records you want to keep.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really good way to keep records. So as an example and anecdotally, we can see transactions on the blockchain. It doesn't mean that you always know who is transacting, but you can get metrics. So like one of the cool things about our project, and this is pretty far down the rabbit hole, but in terms of ETH Printer, one of our community members actually created a Dune dashboard. This is valuable, and really quickly, actually, I think it would be helpful for me to introduce the concept of ETH Printer. So ETH Printer is a project on Base where it's called a reflection token, and the idea is by holding the coin long term, you actually get rewards and distributions straight into your wallet in the form of Ethereum. And this is done two different ways. So the first way is there's a tax on each transaction that gets redistributed to the holders. And then furthermore, we're doing things with our treasury to actually stake the Ethereum in there. And eventually our goal is to get 32 Ethereum into our treasury so that we can run a validator node. And that provides two valuable things for our community. One is additional rewards that they can get, so it's not reliant on volume. But secondly, we want to give the opportunity to the Base community to actually own an Ethereum validator. And our the way that we think about it is every single transaction that happens on Base goes through an Ethereum validator. So we really want to give the Base community the opportunity to own a piece of that if they don't have 32 Ethereum themselves. So that is that's the project. But going back to what you asked about, an audit trail, I think that one of the cool things about our project is one of our community members, as I mentioned, created what's called a Dune dashboard. And this is a dashboard that's publicly available to anyone, that where they can see information like daily volume on this specific asset. This is data that's automatically gathered.
For
Also,
everyone, just to have context, is
yeah,
like Dune is a company that provides data for everything that happens on blockchain. So you can kind of think of it as your big database where all the different blockchains are indexed, and then you could just layer this dashboard on top that shows the info Alec was just talking about.
Exactly, and it's really cool. I mean, you can see that we've given we've as a project distributed over 7 Ethereum at this point. We're only, I think, 19 days old today. So we're on track for some really good stuff, and it's really valuable to be able to show this data to the community, and it makes it easier as someone who's not I'm not a data guy. No one on the team is running a lot of running a lot of stuff in the background that allows people to see this data. But because it's on blockchain, this information is available, and companies like Dune allow us to easily make it available to the community for them to see what's actually going on.
I feel like a good analogy of that is if you think about internet traffic and how internet traffic works today, you cannot ask, in Germany it would be somebody like a Telekom, in the US it may be a Verizon or an AT&T. You cannot ask your internet service provider to give you, oh, this is everything that happened within our network. They won't just really like give you the ins and outs. While on the blockchain, you can get that. You can literally see publicly who is doing what, and you're able to build those graphs for yourself and then show, okay, this is who uses our application, this is how it's used, this is the public metrics that we can show.
Yeah, completely. I think that's a great point, and just kind of going to where blockchain is today versus where it was or where it's been in the past. So you have this interesting trend starting of people understanding that blockchain is meant to be transparent and public. And so I think one of the coolest developments recently is you see Deutsche Bank, which is one of the largest banks in the world. They actually they took an interesting step. They actually took a play out of Coinbase's playbook, and they created their own layer two, or they're creating their own layer two,
Yeah,
really, on the
they're in the
ZK,
process, yeah.
yeah, on the ZK rollup, which is built on Ethereum. And what that tells me is that people are valuing public permissionless blockchains. While when banks started to get involved in as early as 2018, I'll use JP Morgan as an example, one of the largest banks in the world. They created Onyx, which is a private permission blockchain. So what they wanted to do was have their own internal blockchain, which is very useful for their own clients. And Deutsche Bank said, we're looking at what Coinbase has done with Base. We're looking at what Kraken has done with creating Ink Mainnet. We're looking at what Sony has done by creating Sonium. Like, these companies are seeing that there's a lot of value to opening up the blockchain to anyone that wants to come and build on it and create their own infrastructure and their own world where people can come in, build applications that are specific to their blockchain. And it's a really cool thing, and everyone can kind of move in between blockchains very seamlessly on top of Ethereum. So it's very exciting, and I like the way that it's trending.
Do you know what the business angle is? Like, if we take the technicals out of it and we're talking to like a CEO of the company and they're like, okay, I see all of them doing something with Ethereum. Why?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of value to building on top of blockchain, and specifically on top of public blockchains. I think that as the world becomes, right now there's an accessibility layer to blockchain where, people at a certain age or at a certain technical point, even people are our age and very young, they don't have this great understanding, and there's still a technical hurdle to access Web3, right, and to access these wallets. But as the world gets younger and as people get more comfortable with the technology, they're going to want to attract those users. And one of the best ways to do that is by bringing things on chain. And if we're moving into this on chain, into on chain infrastructure, and people are getting more comfortable with it, and there's adoption happening at a great rate for people on chain, that people will move that way. And I think that's what some of these companies are seeing, is that we want to attract the next generation of users, and this is what they'll want to use. And instead of having everything siloed and private, people want to make it public and transparent, which is really one of the cool things about blockchain, and is one of the things that that blockchain can do to change traditional finance and traditional industries as a whole.
What I find super interesting about that is the interoperability between those ecosystems, because especially for what Samsung is doing, they're building on top of Optimism slash Ethereum in a direct way, where literally this week they launched and they tried to censor certain transactions because they were like, oh, we don't like you doing that. Well,
Mm-hmm.
then somebody just used Ethereum directly instead of going
Yeah.
through Samsung and forced his transactions on Samsung's like layer two on their blockchain. So if you think about it, on a highway system where you have your main highway and you have your side highways, Samsung is running their private road on the side, and somebody just used the main highway to get around Samsung, like not letting them on the private street and have their car be on that road.
Yeah, exactly. And do you mean Sony with
Oh,
Sonium?
Sony, yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. No, it's they're both giants in the communication space. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's a really great analogy. And if you don't want to participate in a certain ecosystem, I mean, bridges are still there's still a technical component and a barrier to entry there. But personally, as someone who's very comfortable with Web3 and wallets, it is very easy for me to go from any L2 to a different L2. And I think these scaling solutions, there's a lot of argument that they're cannibalizing the Ethereum network. And I couldn't disagree more. I think that what it's doing is it's creating demand on so many levels for Ethereum being able to scale. I think it's nice that there's all these different playgrounds. It's like, it's like the US. It's like there's Ethereum, which is the country, and then there's all these different states that have their own rules and regulations around how to use it, what they want to be focused on, their niches. So it's exciting, and I really believe in this ecosystem. So it's very cool to watch all these large companies and large institutions that have been around forever saying we see the future as being on-chain, transparent, public. We want to be a part of this, so we're going to build on top of Ethereum and attract developers and make it happen.
Yeah, before we go further into the future of Ethereum, what Ethereum holds, how did you get to where you're now? How did you grow up? How did you get into blockchain? Walk us through that.
Sure. So great question. So I got into blockchain in the beginning of 2016 with my co-founder. So my co-founder of Advantage Blockchain, he reached out to me for weeks. He had actually Googled how to get rich when we were in college, and he
Wait, so
found
you were in college together?
no, we actually weren't in college together. We grew up together. He was one of my best friends from growing up, and then we split for college. While we were in college, he was in class, Googled how to get rich, found an article on Bitcoin and Ethereum, and for weeks he was hounding me and saying, you have to look at this stuff. I think you'll find it very interesting. There's real opportunity here. And one of the things that spoke to me very highly was I love the idea of decentralization, and I love the idea of non-correlated assets and being able to get outside of traditional rails. I love the idea of a bank can't tell you where you can and cannot send money. The idea of self-sovereignty. All of this really spoke to me. And so I started to learn more and more. And early 2016, we were in college. We didn't have that much money. We threw all the little money we had into the market, and we started to learn about what was going on. 2017 explored things outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum. And the end of 2017, it was the first real public bull run where it caught the public's eye. And my now co-founder and I, we were like, we gotta quit our jobs. We have to actually come together, and we have to focus on blockchain. So we came together. We started Advantage Blockchain, which has been incredible. We've had many different focuses. So we obviously our main focus is research. That allows us to be great educators and investors in the space. Our main business is our hedge fund. So we do have an investment fund. We're actually one of the first funds that's focused on the base ecosystem and really optimism as a whole, which is very exciting. But yeah, I mean, we've had an incredible ride. We've done a lot of work in the RWA space. We've done a lot of consulting. But really what we are is we're a research conglomerate that consists of blockchain users, which I think is so important. Like we know the space because we use the space, but also we're educators. We want to build the largest public free blockchain library and give everyone the resource, because one of the most difficult parts of the blockchain industry is where you're getting information and where to get actual verifiable good information. Now it's a lot easier because there's more institutions and more, I guess, reputable companies that are creating these resources. But we want to make sure that people know where to go. We're like the dream, right? We were a couple of 23-year-old kids who started a hedge fund, and that's really cool. And this is one of the few industries that you can do that. So we just want to provide the next generation of people the resources to actually get into the space and be successful.
It's super interesting. You're saying there's very different places to get information from with
Yes.
different levels of accuracy, while we were just talking about how accurate the blockchain is because it's mostly all public and you can access all of that data through services like Dune. Yet you're here saying, oh shit, there's probably not that many good quality information sources.
Well, it's not that there's not many good quality information sources. It's that there's a lot of people who speak about blockchain and crypto that really don't understand it or haven't taken the time to learn about it. So you see a lot of people that will go on mainstream media sources try to talk about blockchain. Like I'll point as an example to 60 Minutes, right? So 60 Minutes is one of the most watched news programs in America, and I want to say a month or two ago, they did an entire thing about crypto. And the reporter, whose job it is to learn about the industry and make fair judgments, said that there's no use cases, and I couldn't disagree more. She failed to mention anything about decentralized finance, which has been widely adopted. I am actually writing next week for, I've written an article for CoinDesk. So I'm a contributor to CoinDesk's letter to advisors. And I'm talking about one of the greatest use cases that I see is actually using stable coins for financial advisors' clients to have a better savings account, to earn more yield on cash, to for commerce, being able to accept payments. There's so many use cases that crypto brings. Sure, it's early days and we don't have all of the AI and cloud computing and gaming use cases that we will eventually, but those are being built. And in the meantime, it's very unfair to say that there's no value or no utility in crypto, because it is more used than people would imagine. So you have large media people speaking on crypto and blockchain. They don't understand it. So it's like, we don't want to push you towards there. We want to push you towards the people like Bitwise, who are putting out incredible information. We want to point you to the Blockworks of the world. We want to point you to the Advantage blockchains of the world, where we're providing this good information as people who have been in the space and understand it.
On your founder journey, how did that go? Like you said, you're 23 and you're starting a hedge fund, and you're doing consulting, you're doing a lot of education. Like, walk me through the first days of now you're getting sent and hammered with here's Ethereum, here's Bitcoin. What went through your mind?
Yeah, so I'm 30 now, which is
Congrats.
yeah, thank you. And yeah, so we started this when we were about 23. I think 23 was the correct age, but yeah, I mean, it's been a long road. So when we got into the industry, it was more the Wild West. It's still somewhat the Wild West, but it was way more the Wild West, and people didn't get it. It's the first time people were hearing about crypto and blockchain. So we were some of the first people to try to, bring this into the mainstream fold. And there were a lot of skeptics, there were a lot of cynics, a lot of people who said this couldn't work, a lot of people who wouldn't touch the industry. There still are. I mean, we're so early, but it's been a journey trying to have like follow the adoption curve, where not only are we bringing people into the space, but we're having people understand it. We're bringing people in that want to work with us.
Like,
So we've
how was
grown.
that in 2016?
What do you mean?
when you first started out, like
Yeah.
how was that talking to people, educating people, raising the fund?
Brutal. It was, and the company was founded in 2017. So we started in 2016. But yeah, I
Yep.
mean, it was like even talking to my parents, right? It's like trying to explain to them what this is. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's magic internet money and, good luck with
How did
everything.
you explain it? Like, what's the analogies you try to use?
Yeah, I think that I think that it all comes down to digital gold. I've changed how I describe Ethereum since then. I used to describe it as digital oil because the idea was, and it still somewhat is. I do think Ethereum is much more than digital oil. I understand that use case, but I actually would describe Ethereum now as like the digital app store, like the blockchain app store where people can actually just go on and create their own applications and use applications that are decentralized. But for Bitcoin, that's the first one, and Bitcoin is king for a reason. It's actually the easiest to explain, and it's the first thing that you explain. It's the first use case of crypto. It's bringing people into the space to understand that this is a store of value. It can be sent anywhere in the world. Um, it can be held in a self-sovereign manner, and it is this wonderful thing with a fixed inflation schedule and a finite supply that is predictable, and mathematically it's designed to be a better version of gold in a digital way. So that is how I tried to explain. I don't remember I'm sure my explanation has gotten way better since then, but yeah, I remember trying to explain Bitcoin, and those were the topics I was trying to hammer.
While you were raising, like, what was that emotional journey like when you, because from how I understand it, you raised the fund also in 2017, right?
So actually, to it was a different structure back then. So back then we were raising for separately managed accounts. So it wasn't a pooled fund structure. It was we were managing individual portfolios, which was really cool. But like literally, we would accept a $3,000 portfolio. It's it. We were I mean, we were just trying to get our feet off the ground. Anyone that would touch us, we were happy to work with. And then in 2022, we actually switched over to a fund structure. We've gotten it to the point where our minimum is $100,000 now. Um,
Congrats.
and we're actually, so we have this retail fund, which has been wonderful. But we're actually about to start raising for our institutional fund. So our institutional fund is going to be for people like RIAs, for family offices. It's going to be a little bit different in how assets are custodied. There's going to be more trading restrictions. It'll be more difficult to access some of the base tokens that we love to use. It'll be more difficult to access some of the DeFi platforms that we love to use.
It's like
But
when people typically talk meme coins and kind of like shit coins, that's going to be hard for you now with that fund.
yeah, yeah. Well, the joke is, and we have fun with it, right? And we actually put out a lot of great research, and I'd encourage anyone to check out our Substack, which is I believe abfund.substack is I believe that's or abfund.substack.com, and we actually put out really good information. One of the our director of research is world class. He goes by the pseudonym Whitetail, but he also is one of our portfolio managers, and he wrote an amazing piece on how you can value meme coins. And there is a way. I mean, people laugh at it, and it is funny, and it's part of the culture. But there is a way to pick meme coins and shit coins that could have value, and it's really about what is popular, what are people going to respond to and react to, and what kind of community do people want to be a part of that's being fostered. And so it's important to look at these things not just as a joke, but as a way to potentially make money. And quite honestly, I mean, we've invested in some of the most real projects out there. I don't think anything compares to some of our meme coin holding gains. So it's there is a role for that in a serious hedge fund.
How do you explain meme coins to family offices?
So that's a little different. With our institutional fund, we're going to give them exposure to beyond what the ETFs could give exposure to. And it's going to be simple. We're going to mostly trade the blue chips. We're going to have a few yield strategies, and we're going to have, and it's going to be, in qualified custody, so everything's insured. That's a much different thing. For a retail fund, we're allowed to have more fun. And that's where, it's not limited to, like small investors. We do have some larger, more institutional type investors that can actually see value in this culture side of crypto and know that, there's something here I don't personally know how to value, or these like memes and these jokes, but I know that Advantage Blockchain can.
So it's more like you're explaining the attention economy then? That's a term I've always heard attached to it. Or like, because if I'm thinking about somebody sitting in a family office, how do they even get meme coins?
Yeah, I mean it's difficult, right? It's yes, I think attention economy is a great way to describe it. It's where are people's attentions focused. You look at something like Pepe as an example. Pepe has been an internet meme forever, right? And it took off when it was created as a cryptocurrency. So yeah, so when talking to a family office about how to access these things, I don't think you start with meme coins. I think you start with how to access Web3 and get them comfortable with that. So you try to onboard them. So like I think one of the easiest ways is like you talk about DeFi, right? You can, if you're willing to learn these extra steps and learn these technical, ways to access this like online economy, you can have access to great yield with really great projects on things like I'd use Aerodrome as an example. This is like the central liquidity hub for Coinbase's on-chain ecosystem, which is Base. And so that is a really easy thing to explain. It's much harder to get these people involved. But I think as a company we always preach things like self-custody and getting outside of traditional ways of holding assets. And so it's trying to onboard people to the space. I'll give you a story. So we've got this client and he's 77 years old, and he is, he's actually, I'm meeting with him later today because I meet with him once every few weeks to help onboard him to crypto. And guess what? This 77-year-old guy is way more advanced than some of the 20 and 30-year-olds that I know, where they don't even know how to access a self custody wallet. So I've got this guy. He's trading on Uniswap. He's trading on Aerodrome. He's bridging between Arbitrum and Base and Optimism, and it's really cool. And it's actually one of my greatest accomplishments as a founder is helping bring this person into the space to take advantage of what's out there.
Like, what are kind of the questions that you get asked in those conversations?
They're all over the place. It's a lot of it's why, and that's actually a good point. Is like, why are we doing this? And it actually that brings me back to where we are and how early we are. So there's this, and I keep coming back to this high barrier to entry and this accessibility layer of blockchain where it's difficult. It takes a lot of hours to teach someone how to actually use a Web3 wallet and get comfortable with connecting your wallet to a browser and connecting that to a platform. So it's difficult there. And I think that where we are is like where AOL, right before where AOL was when AOL came out. AOL was the first internet, browser and platform to actually come and allow people to access the internet without command line. So it took away the need for a technical, like needing this technical expertise to actually use the internet. And now anybody could do it with this really nice UI UX. I think Coinbase is one of the first that's bringing that into the light, but we're still so early. There hasn't been that AOL moment where it's hard, now it's easy. Because even with Coinbase and Gemini and Crypto.com, which are the big US like centralized exchanges, there's still like it's still not like where it will be, and
But
it's
like,
yeah.
when you're talking about the why, what do you say? Because you just described where we are and like how it would
Yeah,
fit with sort of like an internet roadmap. And for example, Coinbase is really big on building experiences for the end consumer,
yeah,
which by necessity needs to be as easy as possible.
yeah.
But like when you get asked about the why in terms of the end game, like without any restrictions, like what's the why that we're building towards?
Yeah, great question. The why is because this is where everything's headed and it's a much better system. Everything will be made better through blockchain and by being on chain. This is like my grandfather, rest in peace. He was, one of the best people I've ever met. He refused to use computers. And this was because, he thought it was a fad and he didn't want to take the opportunity to learn about computers, right? And if you are at an older age and think that this stuff is not important, it is. Everybody is using computers now. Every person over 80 is using a smartphone. It's so people need to learn how to adapt with the times. And just because something is difficult does not mean that it's not worth it. And you can access all of these different things. You can access yield, the ability to lend. You can access all these use cases by just taking the time to learn
But
about
like,
how to
why
access.
why would I do that on a blockchain compared to going to my bank? Because like if I go to my bank today, we're out of zero interest policies, so I can actually in 2025 get some interest, like some yield out of my bank. I can get some dividend returns. I can do lending with my local bank. Like why would I go onto blockchain for that?
Yeah, I think it's the instantaneous factor. I think that being able to make it so I'll use loans as an example. So if I want to lend, one, I think there's better yields on top of like a decentralized finance platform, and this is because there's less parties that are involved. With banks, you need to pay things. With me, I can engage with a smart contract and a platform and lend out something instantaneously, get better yield, and also have it so if collateral dips below a certain price, then it's just put right into my wallet. It automates the entire process. It betters the entire process. It shortens the time in the process. There's so many advantages to doing things on chain in a peer to peer way and in a trustless way than actually going to a bank, which takes time. To get into a bank, you need to, at least in America, I don't know how it works in Europe or other places in the world, you need to schedule an appointment.
Same.
We've had issues where you can't just go to a bank and say, "Hey, I'm ready to loan my cash." It's like, how long would that process take? And then you have to transfer funds into the right place. You have to sign all this paperwork. They have to look into you. So I think there's a lot of advantages to keeping it on chain.
And yeah, like you said, on chain it's instantaneous for one. But then you also explained how like you have to move with the times and people aren't comfortable with using that right now, right? Like how do you talk to say like your 77-year-old client and like, well, he's probably done business a lot, so he knows all of those terms. But how does that then translate to going on chain?
It's yeah, I mean it's as you'd expect, right? He I think that it takes a certain type of person to actually look at what we're doing and realize that it's important and saying like I need to actually learn what's going on here because it'll be valuable to me. And people who aren't taking the time to learn are missing out on some valuable opportunities where there's an inefficient market because of who this like technical expertise that's required to actually use this stuff. So right now there's a first mover advantage that people won't see. So like you see someone who is open to moving into this industry, that is someone that's actually going to take advantage of what's out there.
So, but like when you talk to them, you're like, okay, just look into buying your first, like say, like part of Bitcoin or full Bitcoin, or play around with getting some lending funds. Like, how do you go from okay, I think this is interesting,
Mhm.
whether or not you think you don't trust institutions, or you just want faster loans, or you just want the peer to peer, so there's no bank in between. Like whatever speaks to you, like how do you take your first step?
Yeah, so I'll go back to my 77-year-old. So he took the first step because he has children that are interested in crypto. He's heard about it, he's read about it. He's a retired dentist. So he wanted to, he's investing all day. This is what he enjoys to do. He learned about Bitcoin, he learned about Ethereum, he learned about, some of the DeFi stuff that's out there. And he was actually buying it through Coinbase and other centralized exchanges. And when I started working with him, because he actually invested in our fund, I started working with him because he showed me his holdings in Coinbase, and I see Aave there, and I said to him, I was like, "Do you know what Aave is?" And he's like, "Yeah, I know. It's like some lending platform." And I was like, "Let me show you." So we go in, and I showed him the platform, and I showed him how it works, and I have like loans that are set up on Aave. So I showed him how it works, what my holdings look like, what the experience was, and then I explained to him like you own many tokens in your wallet that I'm seeing where you can be earning yield on this by staking it, by vaulting it. And I said, but a cost with it in terms of you have to be comfortable to learn how to use all this on-chain stuff. And instead of being scared of it and saying, you know what, I'm fine with my holdings, he said, I want the additional yield. Let's do it. Let teach me.
And like staking and lending it out, and like lending, I think is easy to comprehend, right? It's
Yeah.
like you provide your token to somebody else, and they will pay you interest on it. That's
Yeah.
also how it works in a peer-to-peer sense. There's just another entity maybe that pulls it together, but it's held in smart contracts, and you're dealing with one other person most of the time, or one institution. Whereas staking, like how do you walk somebody through staking?
Yeah, that's such a good question. It's much more difficult because you have to explain the concept of consensus and the concept of mining really. And so what I do is I'll typically start with Bitcoin mining because people have heard of Bitcoin miners. It's easy to understand. There's hardware. It's not easy to understand, but it's like more comprehensible where you have computers that are talking to each other that come to a consensus, reading the blockchain, confirming that if I want to send you $100, that I have enough money to actually do that. So that is easier to explain. But then I guess I guess the way to explain it is like you have these supercomputers which are like actual hardware, and you're taking this to a different way, like with staking. And with staking, it's like moving it into a more digital format where by locking up tokens, it functions the same as these supercomputers validating the network.
But then how do I get money out of that?
Yeah, it's like a reward, right? It's by validating the network, you are rewarded in that token.
So it's like, okay, I'm running some computer. I give that to Amazon. They put
Yeah.
it in their data center and they use it to verify their customers' requests and run their customer requests. And for that, I'm paid.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's in a so the difference between like centralized companies and like decentralized cryptos that I'm seeing is like because it's decentralized, you have to create incentive structures. There's no incentive for me to verify a network and validate a network, then I'm not going to do it, right? But by offering a percentage, by offering Bitcoin to people who mine it, by offering Ethereum to people who stake it to verify the network, that's a really good incentive system. People talk about tokenomics all the time. The number one thing about tokenomics to me is how are we going to incentivize people to actually use this, buy this, and hold this? And so that's what the staking component and mining really comes down to for me.
When when you're talking, okay, there needs to be a like token incentive or like some incentive. Couldn't that incentive just be there's a lot of usage and I just want to make sure that all of my customers are taken care of?
So yes, but like the idea is you want the network to be decentralized. One of the cool things about Bitcoin is, there's millions of people verifying the network all and validating the network all around the world with these miners. And the more that are set up, the more decentralized it is, it becomes much harder to actually shut down the system. There's always like the what if the internet turned off, right? It's like, is the internet really going to turn off in every place in the world? Because right now, there's miners across the globe. You'd have to shut down every single computer and internet access in every single place just to shut down that network. The more that are around, the more miners and the more validators that are around, the harder it is to shut down a network, which just makes for a really good system. I'm not relying on a centralized entity to make sure that there's uptime.
Yeah,
Uh,
but like, why do I need a token to do that? Like Farcaster, for example, which we briefly touched in the beginning, is like a programmable social media platform where you also have a bunch of computers verifying that the social data posted conforms to the standard and that everything is present, that nobody is censored. That's already also globalized, but there's no token to just incentivize you for doing that.
Yeah, well, I think it's infrastructure for tokens that do this, and it's not like there's no incentive for Farcaster. They're looking for users, and somehow they're making money. But what they're doing is they're working with all these decentralized, cryptos that and bringing them on where now you can do access Web3 in a different way. So like I always look at something like Clanker, right? So Clanker is really cool where anybody can go onto Farcaster and create their own token through AI. And so like what they're doing is they're actually facilitating this idea of decentralized cryptos they're not doing it themselves, but the infrastructure kind of goes hand in hand with creating
But
these
like
decent.
Farcaster is not making a single cent out of Clanker being on Farcaster. So like there's no direct incentive there. But if Clanker grows and continues to
Yeah,
grow, Clanker will have an incentive to just verify the network because it's core to their business that the network is intact, right?
sure.
Because otherwise their social network to generate the AI based tokens doesn't work anymore. But
Yeah,
then
well,
you don't actually need the token underlying. Like what I want to get to is there is a need in some networks where it really makes sense to have the incentives aligned in a way for security to have a fixed security budget. For
yeah.
Bitcoin, the security budget is 21 million Bitcoins.
Mhm.
For Ethereum, it's the staked part of Ethereum, like whatever part of Ethereum is staked and validating. For Farcaster, there is no security budget, right?
Yeah. No, completely. And I think that with something like Farcaster, like it's crypto actually facilitates the idea of open source and being able to use things for good, but that doesn't mean that there's no direct incentive financially for people. Creating open source technology can actually be one of the greatest financial incentives. You look at what Optimism's doing. Optimism is literally allowing anyone to go and create their own L2 and create their own digital economy on top of the Ethereum ecosystem. And that's like, there is financial incentive to them allowing people to open source their technology and build on top of it.
To me, it's fascinating that like Farcaster has no direct incentive, but has so much indirect incentive for the clankers and the companies building on top of it to be like, well, this is core to my infra. I need to verify this.
Yeah.
It's like same with
Yeah.
Ethereum. There's people that do not stake but still run a node and like participate in the network just because they need either the latency or just the verification because it's core to their business.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree.
So like to me that's for sure interesting.
Yeah.
When you think of executives who are thinking about like adopting blockchain, what's the worst part of it? Like what's the negative trade-off?
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to point at education, right? It's there's a lot of a lot of what people have said is it's for the black hats, it's for people who are scammers, for hackers. I think there is a component to that. It's dangerous for people to get involved in crypto. There's a lot out there, and one of the things that I found with ETH Printer and the project is, there's a whole world of people that there's not much organic. It's a lot of people that are doing like pay to play. It's like, you want us to talk about your token, you need to give us zero point 0.5 ETH. And so I'd say that there's like, it's difficult to find what's real and true and organic out there. And there's a lot of people who take advantage of the ability to fake numbers and fake streams and fake subscribers and everything, to make it look like they're a lot more valuable than there are. So like, I wouldn't say, it is a little bit right now, some of a scammy industry. It's no more scammy than any other industry, but there's a lot of opportunity to fake, and create good optics for something that ends up being totally not useful.
It's like the worst part of it is you can't really verify what's fake or not because of the good benefit of decentralization for it, right? It's like in the
Yeah.
early internet where we didn't all have Facebook accounts.
Yeah.
We couldn't say, okay, this is a bot or not. Now, actually, that Facebook is so big, we can't even say is that person a bot or not
Yeah.
easily on Facebook. Same way we can't on the blockchain.
Yeah.
If we then go opposite sides, like what's the great part about adopting it?
The great part is that it's improving industries. I mean, as a retail user, the ability to lend and borrow instantaneously is huge for me. I'll talk about stable coins. Like, I know I hit this in the beginning, but we are so Advantage Blockchain is one of the first bankless organizations, where we don't even have a bank account. Like, we use stable coins entirely. And like, this is a better system. It allows us to hold cash in a better way, in a much more efficient way. It allows, payments that we need to make to be done, incredibly quickly, incredibly, efficiently with low cost. And it allows us to be agile on chain and be able to use all these different use cases that are available.
Dude, that's super interesting. You're saying you're bankless. Do you have an interface to pay wires? It's like for a lot of people I speak to, the hardest is that their suppliers just expect a bank transfer.
Yeah. So we this so I'll the suppliers part is easy because like our fund administrator and people that we have to pay are is done through crypto. We also have a crypto.com card where we can pay using crypto on like a debit card. So that allows us to pay people easily without having a bank account. But like the most difficult part of this, and this is a discussion we have all the time, is we are asking people who are not blockchain investors. Like our main target for our funds are people that have no exposure to crypto. So we're asking these people to actually come on and send us crypto, which is a learning curve. And I've spent a lot of time bringing people into the system, and it's not the most scalable solution, but it is something that's going to help drive the industry forward. It's okay. Now you've used Coinbase. Now you've used a centralized exchange. Maybe you create a wallet. We're creating this way to actually onboard people into the system. So the negative about it is it takes time. It's not as scalable, and we're spending a lot of time trying to bring people in. There's mistakes that are made, but then at the same time, the positive of it is we are truly pushing adoption.
What's the questions and pushback you get when you're going to somebody and they're like, okay, well now I need to send you crypto. Okay, cool. Like what kind of questions do they ask first?
It's how do I send you crypto? It's no, it's they're used to wires, and what the way that I explain it, which is true, this is not false, but is we do so as a fund we need to KYC AML our investors, which is know your customer, anti-money laundering. So centralized exchanges have a level of KYC AML that's required. So the reason we have them wire their money to Coinbase as opposed to wire their money directly to us is because we need a level of KYC AML on them, and Coinbase's KYC AML satisfies our requirements as a fund. So we say this is the best way for you to onboard in a compliant way. So we're going to keep it somewhat of a comfort level. We're going to wire the money into Coinbase. So now you're using your Web 2 experience, but now you're bringing it into Web 3. We're going to take the cash, we're going to put it into USDC, and then we're actually going to send it to our wallet, which is their first experience ever on a Web3 wallet, which is cool.
Yeah, to me the cool part there is you just walk them through all of it, where the pain points are more like, okay, well, how do I do this, instead of like, why do I do this, how does this work? Or do you also get a lot of those questions?
Less than you would think. It's people once they buy into it, it's not why, it's more like, okay, now what? So we're doing it. I explain it. It's reasonable that we have KYC AML requirements. They could say, why is there no wire? But it's just it's easy. It's easier for us and it's better for us. And I think that some people at this point, a lot of our clients are excited at the idea of actually being able to use this technology. So I think explaining to them like this is your first step in actually using the technology to get into our fund. You're going to have to use blockchain. You're going to have to interact with a wallet. That's like almost exciting for people.
It's definitely more than just buying an ETF on a classical exchange, right?
Yeah. Or even like buying Bitcoin on Robinhood, or one of the
Or frankly speaking, even just Coinbase, right?
yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Coinbase is like the biggest crypto exchange, but it feels like a traditional broker, which all the kudos to them for making that experience as smooth as a traditional broker. Though that doesn't mean just because you bought crypto on there that you now actually use the network. Well, yeah, Coinbase has for you, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
you didn't.
yeah, well, that goes full circle into this discussion on why we built ETH Printer on Base, why Advantage Blockchain has such a focus on Base, and it's because we believe in what Coinbase has done. Coinbase has created the best way to on ramp and off ramp crypto to date. Now you have a lot of institutions that are coming into the space, banks, asset managers like the BlackRocks of the world, Fidelity, Schwab, they're all now offering or planning to offer crypto services to their clients. So what Coinbase has done, and they've kind of realized we're going to lose some market share when it comes to actually onboarding people to crypto. This like pseudo broker that they are in the crypto space, like they're going to lose out on some of that business because of just the nature of who's getting involved. So they've taken it to the next level. They've now said, all right, you guys are coming into the space. We're going to be 3 steps ahead of you. We're taking everyone on chain now, and we're going to do it through Base. And so they control a majority of Wall Street's money in crypto. They have like the custody solutions, they have the retail users. So now what they're doing is now they're pushing people on chain, and that's why you see someone like Kraken or Deutsche Bank going back to those. That's why they're going on chain, is because they see what Coinbase is doing and how far ahead of everyone else they are, and they say, we have to be right up there with Coinbase.
What I find most interesting about Deutsche doing it is that in Frankfurt, there's Frankfurt Financial School, which
Mm-hmm.
had one of the pioneers of blockchain and especially Bitcoin in Germany
Mm-hmm.
as one of the professors, really leading and just like showing everyone, explaining it to everyone all around the financial sector. But people just now are starting to deal with it, do projects, do pilots. As somebody growing up in Frankfurt, I kind of like felt it over the last few years, and now I'm getting like conversations with people who like, oh, like how does it actually work? It's slipping into the banking industry slowly and slowly.
Yeah.
Um, and Deutsche doing it, they're doing it through Singapore though. They're not doing it in Frankfurt, which is
Interesting.
most interesting because they're headquartered in Germany.
Really, that is very interesting. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's positive development. It's a natural adoption curve. It's just people need to hear about it over and over again, and then eventually some people get it and they take it more seriously as it gets more widely adopted.
When you're looking at the core problems it solves, like imagine you're talking to an executive. What's the core problem that Web3 solves for them, like beyond blockchains?
Yeah, I mean, they're spending so much time and money on people, unnecessary people that blockchain can really take out. They're spending time on money and on financial transactions. There's issues with manual error, like double spends, all these different things that blockchain really makes impossible. So what I'd say is, like, if you break it down, and any industry, we could talk about any industry that uses transactions or data, blockchain will make it more efficient. It will make it better. It will make it more transparent. It'll make it more like customizable. There's an audit trail. So it just makes, I would say, it can cut costs and it can make things more efficient in your industry.
Is like all of that just like finance related, or does it go beyond it?
No, it doesn't have to be finance related. I would point to something like gaming, right? Where or IP. IP is actually a really good one. So like the ability to own something like verifiably and digitally, like own some sort of IP that's provable, and being able to use that for revenue, that's extremely valuable. One of my favorite projects on Base is going to sound funny, and I'm sure you've heard of it, but it's called Mr. Miggles. And Mr. Miggles is like kind of a meme, but it's actually so much more than that. They've created like an IP incubation for meme coins and for different IP on Base, and even outside of Base too. But what it allows people to do is like you can, and Coinbase like actually made the argument really well. They made a commercial about like this Mr. Miggles where like essentially it takes you through the journey of like Mr. Miggles had these pictures or like something that he owns, and then it was being used for stuff that he didn't want to happen, and there was no way to verify that he actually owns that IP, so he lost out on all the money. And like that is a really good example of how blockchain can be used outside of financial. It's provable ownership. There's things as simple as like documentation. If I can prove through like an NFT, and people look at NFTs and they're like, oh, it's stupid. I can own a JPEG. I can, take a screenshot of it. But NFTs are actually super useful as digital receipts. And if you have a document, like let's just say we enter into an agreement for you to sell me your house, and we can use those documents as NFTs. Those are verifiable, stored in a data depository on chain, where now we can see now we can see the transaction, the documents, and nothing about it can be changed or corrupted.
It's like if you take all of the registry and you put it on chain, you put it in those NFTs, in those like immutable stores, and it becomes programmable, we can see the data, we can actually work with it. What's the last mile that we need to do? Because we've been doing that with digital artwork already. Like we've proven that this technology works to keep records and keep track of ownership.
Yeah, well, there's so you have one side of crypto, which are like people who want to have fun and participate in the culture, and they want to use NFTs for things like making money, which is like, let's go create a piece of art and then let's sell it, right? And then you have companies that are more traditional and more established and have been around forever that can use NFTs in really good ways, but there's not as much of a focus on that. And like, there's also, again, going back to the accessibility issue, where if I'm a construction company, and I'm an owner of a construction company who's 58 and I've done business a certain way forever, like why would I want to take the time to actually use this technology even though I know it can improve what I'm doing?
It's interesting. You're saying culture for what I always call speculation.
Yeah.
I just name it what it is. Like a lot of crypto is just going into a casino knowing that you'll bring some bands and either you walk out with more or you walk out with less, but you had fun in the process and you make friends along the way, right?
Yeah.
As people always say, it's all about the friends we make along the way. But there's a lot of people making like 100 or 1,000x, and there's also way more people just losing all their money, which is where what you're doing with education really comes in. But what's interesting to me there is you're saying that's part of it. Like, where do the institutions get the knowledge from that isn't that? Because I feel like that public persona of the crypto guy being the speculator is very entrenched right now, which, like you said, is part of the adoption curve.
Yeah, I think that what's really positive is, and I would shout out Bitwise. I think they're a tremendous company. They're actually one of the first, or they're the ETF that's truly on chain. They've been in the game forever. They really understand crypto and the real institutional side of it. But yeah, I mean, you see these companies that are putting out true reports around like actual useful use cases for some of these institutions and larger industries. And so like you have one side of crypto that's a casino and all about fun and culture, and then you have the other side which is like, why don't we use this to actually improve our industries? So for the it's becoming more and more every year, but you see companies that are posting about things like how DeFi infrastructure can be applied to real world assets. You have, and actually putting real world assets and equity on chain to be able to take things like instantaneous loans against equity. I think that like AI is still kind of fun right now, but it doesn't mean that that can't be a way to also improve industries using crypto and what's been built in AI through crypto. So using something like Virtual's protocol and actually creating AI agents to improve your business, whether from a marketing perspective, whether from like a research perspective. There's so much that can be done and improved in every technology in every industry through this technology.
Would you say that's similar to how the finance world works, or is it different?
What specifically?
Like finance in general, I feel like a lot of finance is just like Wall Street and like stocks is also just people trying to make money.
Yeah,
And that also has a speculative and a bullshit side to it, where other parts of finance are the banking system that people now say, well, why would I use crypto when I can have that? Which apparently makes their lives better. They can loan for houses and they can do all kinds of productive stuff with it.
yeah. I mean, it comes back to how advanced do these financial industries want to be? Are they going to be left in the dust when everything moves towards where we're trending is everything's moving on chain, right? It's still years and years away, but are you going to start adopting it today, or are you going to move and start applying it to your industries and real world assets and settlement and all of these different applications that blockchain is tremendous for? Or are you going to wait around? As a financial advisor, are you going to have your client holding a savings account which earns 0.4% APY, or are you going to move it into Coinbase custody, which allows you to earn 4% APY on stable coins? It's like, are you going to adopt to make life better for your clients, for financial institutions, or are you just going to say, I'm comfortable with what we have. I'm comfortable with all the middlemen that we have that cost a lot of money, but allow our financial system to go. It's I'd be scared if I was banks, but if I was a bank, I'd probably want to adopt because or adapt because I know that the future is coming on chain.
One thing that you said there is interesting is all of the people is interesting. There's many people working in banks that if the auditing and just the transaction process becomes so efficient, we may not need, which
Yeah,
also means prices coming down. Like I'm sending money to people I work with all over the world in the development and design studio that I'm doing, where developers, designers, partners, clients just pay not even a cent, like fractions of cents, and I get money in tens of seconds. Even less, most likely. Mostly it's 1 second when we're doing it through like Base and not Ethereum mainnet.
yeah. No, it's valuable, and I think the argument that people would make is, oh, you're gonna take people out of jobs, and I don't think that like innovation shouldn't be stopped by a fear of losing some jobs. It's we should be working. The jobs of the few is not as important as the efficiency of the many. Most people are using the financial system. Most people are not working in the financial system. So are you saying that the jobs of these very few people are more important than like making everyone in the world's life better through these innovations and through this technology breakthrough? I just think that we can't. It's like it goes back to actually like the self-driving car argument, where this is a little bit actually more relevant, but I think the largest industry in the US today is our drivers, right? And whether it's truck drivers or Uber drivers or taxi drivers. And so, are we going to stymie innovation on self driving cars just because it may put some people out of work? Probably not, because it would actually make the world more efficient, and we would save costs with self driving cars. And maybe maybe the roads would even be safer with self driving cars. So it's tough, and I don't mean to sound so heartless for all these people, and but it's time to adapt. If you feel that your job can be taken by AI, then it's time to adapt, and that's something that I'm aware of too. I'm aware that AI, for a hedge fund, may be able to make better trading decisions. Luckily, I'm not on the trading side, and I'm more on the growth side. But it's
Well,
there.
it may just be the marketing angle, right? Like if you
Yeah,
can automate your marketing, all of a sudden you're gone. Like there may be Alec.ai sitting here on the next episode, and I'm talking to an AI now.
yeah,
The most thing where I feel like people will always be there is for people, like service. Like especially on a very high level, there will always be human service because of emotions. Until AI gets good at emotions, but we'll see if that happens, and then we'll just move into physical spaces where you may want to actually see people.
yeah,
My personal prediction. But also, I looked at agriculture, and like that changed. Machines and industry changed. We went into now having a lot of different kind of machinery that we use, where it's way, way, way less people, but it's more industries. It's more that we're producing now. So the jobs shifted from you being in front of a horse or leading the horse on the fields to being in a factory. Then the factory had machines. Now you're in another factory, or you're sitting in an office working on the computer. If that gets done away, then well, you may just not sit in an office. You're able to walk freely around. You may be doing something else. Like I always think people will find a way to have purpose, because otherwise suicide rates are going to go
yeah.
up. Both of that may or may happen. At least we're seeing more quote unquote depression, but I feel like people will always find something to do. So I
Yeah,
wouldn't bet against that. It's just like where and what, right?
of course, there will always be a role for humans. I mean, the most successful people are going to be the people who figure out how to use AI to their advantage, not say, "Oh, I hope AI doesn't come for my job." It's like, no, embrace it, use it, figure out how to use it as a human for your benefit. Like, there's so many things that we can do. I'm playing around with different AI agents, and I'm trying to build multiple AI agents and use everything that's out there because I want to understand what's going on. I don't use I like to write. I don't use ChatGPT to write for me, but I use ChatGPT to bounce ideas off of, to talk about. It's like, is this a correct way to present this argument? What might be a better way to present this argument? Like, what are some of the key like stats that I can take away from this certain thing for this article I'm writing? So it's like I think that there's a lazy component too of AI, which is like, oh, it's going to do everything. It's more like, no, it can actually be the greatest enhancer for what you do. And for our trading team, I mean, we want to embrace this for our fund, for Advantage Blockchain. It's like we want to use AI to make us better, not to replace us. And I think that between, as you said, the human emotion component, the me being able to connect with somebody, and being better traders and being better, having more market knowledge, having more better marketing to bring people into the space, that will make us much better and much bigger.
Yeah, I feel like AI, if it's able to replace me, AI replace me. I'll let my client work be done by you, do quality control, and do just client communication,
Yeah,
because that's what still then is valuable. If you're able to do all of the programming, all of it, well, now I'm just doing UX design and what to actually build and make that make sense.
yeah,
Cool. I'd be fine with that.
sure,
Uh,
yeah.
when when you're looking at like opportunities in Web3, where do you see like the biggest opportunity to go and build something and do something?
Yeah, so I think one of the most underutilized spaces within Web3 is DeSci, or decentralized science. So this is something that recently came on my radar, and actually it's because one of our clients in the fund is a scientist, and I don't know if you are familiar with Research Hub or Research Coin, but the idea that people can get rewarded for providing transparent and open information. They can get financially rewarded for actually doing things like peer reviews, for putting up scientific studies, for writing theses that can be discussed. Like, this is really good. The scientific industry and like the research and development that goes into a lot of science is very siloed, and there's a lot of companies and they hide information from other people, which I get, because those companies want to make a profit. They don't want to just give that information out to everybody. But there could be a lot of benefits in science by having a decentralized world where researchers can actually get paid for providing really good information, for having discussions around this data. And so I think that that's like an incredible area that's probably being under focused on right now.
To me, that's interesting. I have a good friend in the medical field who always says, let me know once zero knowledge is advanced enough that we can do clinical trials
Yeah,
in a distributed and decentralized way. Because it's really hard to get a lot of data in the medical field. AI wants and needs and desires a lot of data. And if we're able to just not reveal the data, but just the points that other people care about through something like zero knowledge, then that would be awesome.
yeah, zero knowledge is incredible. So like in the RWA industry, it's really valuable for facilitating information. So like if somebody wants to invest in a private asset, they have to go through KYC AML. A lot of the times they have to provide accreditation proof. This is a way to not have to go through all of the steps of getting all these different third parties to provide this data. And also now you're turning over valuable data. Like in I'll give you an example. To get onto our fund, you have to provide your social security number. And this is common practice for any investment, right?
Dude, but that's like if I were a US citizen and I'm already feeling sketched out by having to take a picture of the front and back of my ID,
Yeah.
if I have to provide my social security, which is my life, so to say, in the US.
Yeah. Yeah, no, of course. It's like that's why I agree with you. I'm so bullish on zero proof. I think it's a much better system. It's unfortunate that your bank PIN is a 4-digit number where if somebody steals it, then they can have access. If somebody steals your card and is able to get your information, it's a 4-digit thing. If you have verifiable, secure, zero proof where you can provide that data, whether it's biometrically, whether it's all these different ways that you can prove identity, then that is going to be the most effective system. Everyone will feel so much safer about instead of typing in your credit card on your computer, or writing in your social security number when you're going onto a new platform. It could be a game changer in security.
Yeah, like one thing I feel strongly about is just like people not needing to have my full details to just know, okay, he's Sam, he's fine, he'll be all right.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm super interested about.
Yeah.
Is there any final remarks where you're like, this is something that we really need to cover that we missed?
No, I think we did a great job of covering a lot. I mean, I had all the points that I want to. I'm super excited and thankful that you had me on, Samuel. And this was definitely a lot
This
of fun. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about Advantage Blockchain, about ETH Printer. I'm super bullish on where we're headed in the space. I'm super bullish on Base as in general. ETH Printer, we want to maximize the amount of Ethereum on Base. We want to give the Base community the ability to own piece of a validator node and eventually validator nodes while getting rewarded in Ethereum. And then Advantage Blockchain, we're trying to educate the world. We're trying to provide as much good research and clean research as possible. And we're investing in the ecosystem. We're eating our own dog food. So
there's one question I would
yeah.
challenge you with. Well, make it two, because I'll split the one question out. First, how do you describe Farcaster?
Uh, Decentralized social media, I guess.
It's like, and the second question there is when you're talking to somebody in business or as a user, why should they care about Farcaster?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a good question. I don't like without getting too technical and too ideological. It's like this is a new place to put out information, and I think Farcaster is actually more for builders and developers. And I think there's okay. So one thing that we talk about at Advantage Blockchain all the time is user extractable value. How can you, as a user, extract value from what we're putting out there? For Farcaster, that is one of the best places in the world for user extractable value. And we actually have a channel on there as Advantage Blockchain called UEV, which is what we're doing is we're putting out information of how you can extract value from the blockchain. It's where you can learn about new first mover advantage things on Base, where you can learn about how to actually access some of these yield opportunities, some of these AI opportunities, and connect with builders and see what's being focused on and being built.
No, it's a lovely perspective. Like I always say, it's programmable social. Like
Yeah.
it's a programmable social media platform that gives you all the possibilities that you think about when you're thinking, oh, something is programmable. I can interact with it from my backend, my app, and I can just do
Yes.
whatever I want as a nerd. But as like the end user, it's always a little bit like, okay, what is there that I don't have somewhere else? And I
Yeah.
feel like there's a lot of stuff happening where people are like, okay, you can build applications here that you can't build anywhere else. And we're seeing that spread out, but people do not get it yet. So it's interesting to get your take on it, where you're like, yeah, connect with builders. It's a really cool new space to follow the newest trends. And if you're not there, just adopt it later, most likely.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Lovely. Thank you so much for coming on, Alec.
Thank you so much, Samuel. This was a pleasure and really appreciate you having us on.
Thank you for listening, and thanks for the guests for coming on to Techsuite for the C-Suite. In the description below, or the show notes, whatever you want to call them, you will find the awesome resources our guests mentioned to get you started. You can find links to our guests, and you all can also find a summary, takeaways, and other links to keep connected with the show. Thank you so much for listening. Have an awesome day.